213. All cars responding. There's no response coming from 213. No radio contact.
1250, roll EMS, expedite, officer down.
Clear.
2250, officer down, answer for us, start EMS now!
All right, we are here with Tom Lake, ladies and gentlemen. I've got Jack Ryan to the next to me, and we are Jack Squared. I'm Jack Milliken. Tom, thank you for being here.
Thanks, guys, for having me. I appreciate it.
Really glad to have you here. So tell us, where are you from, where are you now, and where are you going?
Oh, where am I from? So born and raised St. Louis. In 1982, my father, who worked for Union Pacific Railroad at the time, we moved to Omaha, Nebraska. Yes, podunk nowhere. And I went to high school and college up there in Omaha. Really enjoyed my time up there. I still have really good friends up there. My parents still live up there, my brothers. And I moved back in 1994 to be a policeman in St. Louis. And in 96, they accepted me and they said, yes, you can come do this silly job, and absolutely love being a policeman. It was the best job, and I recommend anybody who wants to become a cop to go do it. It's a lot of fun to not only see things differently in your world, but to change someone else's world. And I think that was the allure for me. In 16, I was injured in the line of duty, retired. And right now I am working in St. Louis County at their real-time crime center, monitoring some license plate readers and cameras, and also doing some background investigation stuff for them. And where do I want to go? Since my incident, I think my calling in life is probably going to teach, and really like to start teaching people about a couple different things. I'd like to teach police work, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But how to deal with trauma, how to deal with the aftermath of it, and a lot of the things that I wasn't prepared for that have hit me, and some of the things it's cost me, and some of the things that I've learned from it, and it's made me a better person. So that's where I'm at.
How did you become a police officer?
I think I wanted to be one ever since I was about 18 years old. I was working at a retail store in Omaha, Nebraska called Shopco, which no longer exists. So it'd kind of be like Venture here in St. Louis, and or Walmart, because I did work for Walmart. And I was doing their lawn and garden stuff. And I was driving a forklift across the parking lot, and I see a guy running. And there's a security guard chasing him, yelling, "Get that guy." I'm 18. I'm fit, So I see him, and I get off the forklift, and I chase him down, and he's running up a little bit of a hill to get to a car that's sitting on a main street with the door open.
Sure.
This is 1987, 88. So the door's open, and I tackle him on the hill, and like 8 or 12 CD cases go sliding out, and a couple VHS tapes. And for those of you that are still young, they had white plastic things that were about this long, and the CD was this end, and there was it was almost like a handle that you carry the CDs around with. And they flew everywhere, and I grabbed him, and then the security guy, like maybe 8 seconds later, shows up and jumps on him and handcuffs him. And then there was a girl driving the car, because I remember seeing her, and then she drives off, and the door closes as she drives off, and the guy just, you could tell he was defeated. And the security guy picks him up, and he goes, "Hey, grab that stuff." So I did, and we walk back in the store, and we sit down, and we wait for the police to be called. And I'd never been never been through anything. So I'm sitting there, and I'm listening, and this cop walks in, and he goes, I can't remember the guy's name now. He goes, "Hey, Larry, what happened?" He's like, "Yeah, I saw him conceal these CDs down the front of his pants. He got outside. I tried to stop him. He take off running." He goes, "This guy over here, he tackled him for me." And he goes, "You need a job?"
Wow.
I go, "Well, I got one." He goes, "You'd be a good cop, man, if you could chase people down." And I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." And I watched that interaction with that policeman. And the one thing a lot of people don't know about me is I have this crazy sense of humor. So this policeman is literally talking to him, making fun of him, but making him realize the mistake in his life. And I was snickering the whole time. And when they get up and they're going to take this guy to jail, the policeman looks back at me. He goes, "You got my sense of humor, didn't you?" And I said, "Yeah, it's actually quite funny." He goes, "Come do this job and you'll have that every day." And after that, I was hooked. I'm like, I can do that. Yeah. If I could do that, that would be awesome. And so my motto about becoming a policeman was, where else can you drive fast, mess with people, right? And have them not know it and really change something.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is like the perfect job. So with that, I was 18. I immediately started trying to get into loss prevention, which is store security, catching shoplifters. And I got in at 19, and I'd never looked back. And believe it or not, I was going to college to become a weatherman.
Really? Not a bad job in St. Louis. You kind of say whatever you want, and you get away with it, you know?
That's anywhere, right? Isn't it anywhere?
Is it Dave Murray? Or is it Dave Murray, right? That's our
Snowmageddon didn't happen. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. We were wrong. It shifted somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Dave, it's 60 and sunny out. You know.
Hey, if you didn't shove 8 CDs into your pants, but you only shoved 6, you wouldn't be going for the felony. You'd be going for the misdemeanor. So,
brother, do you remember what CDs? Was he more of a classic rock guy, or was he?
Bryan Adams was one of them. Because I remember that because Bryan Adams was one of my favorite singers back in the 80s. You know, I was a little bit of a rock guy. You know, White Snake, White Lion, stuff, Tesla.
So how did you get into, making a change, and where did you see that actually happen as far as how change was made from your side of the?
So it's funny when you get out of the police academy. You go to the police academy and you do these things, and you go to this class. And part of it was for me was there were some guys in the academy that was there because it was a legacy for them. There was people in there to them that this was a job, and there was people in there like me that were like, this is a calling. It's like being a priest, it's a calling. You're going to help somebody. And so I wasn't the smartest kid in the class, but I wasn't the dumbest kid in the class, right? I was the middle of the road guy. I didn't do anything to really get myself in trouble, but I did certain things that made me stand out. And we had those things. So when we got out of field training status, I had my first FTO was maybe a 25-year veteran. And I
wrote an FTO.
That's field training officer. So when you graduate the academy, they put you with a experienced policeman, and you ride with them for 6 to 8 weeks, and you kind of learn how the streets work, how the operation works. Because in the academy, they give you it's like going to college. You go to college and you learn how to do something, but then when you get a job, you have to kind of get on-hands training, and that's what they were doing. So the guy that I had was an older guy, and he really had his ways set about it. So to give the perfect example, I've had 3 weeks in the street with him. We're on day watch. It's 7:15 in the morning. We are at DeLorean Grand in St. Louis, and a guy runs the light in front of us, and we're in a marked police car. And my FTO, who had to drive that day because he did not like the way I drove, I was too aggressive for him, was going to get coffee, flips the guy off, and looks at me and says, "The nerve of some people." And I go, "Well, the last time I checked, we're in a marked police car." And he drove to the 7-Eleven to get his coffee, absolutely ignoring the guy running the red light. Now me, I'm like in my heyday going, man, we got to pull him over. We got to figure out what this is all about. That's a great stop. And 20 years later, I'm a policeman. I see the same thing, and I'm not looking at the fact that they violated. I'm looking at the car, I'm looking at the person, and I'm trying to figure out what caused them to run that light. Is this worth me stopping this person and stopping their day because they're late? Or is this a person that's on their way to do something else? And we'll talk about profiling, but profiling, a lot of people, you can skew things any way you want. But in police work, you have to profile. It has nothing to do with your race. It has nothing to do with how much money you make, how much money you don't make. People will convey to you through their body language and their imaging where they're at and what they're doing. And as a seasoned policeman, you start learning that. And that is why policemen get to be a lot more cynical when they get older, and they're more relaxed, the more intense the conversation or more intense the scene becomes. When you get the inexperienced policemen who haven't seen as much as maybe an inner city policeman is, that's where you get the tension and you get the animosity. And so you saw some of that stuff in the Michael Brown stuff and all that. But that's the reality of life, is that's how you grow as a policeman. The first thing you want to do is stop everything. It's kind of like the old cartoon with Lego and Foghorn and the chicken hawk guy where the big chicken, I can't remember his name, he's standing there and he's like, hey, we should go over there. Yeah, let's go over there. Yeah, come on, let's go. And it's like, hold on, young fella. This will come fast. Yeah. And so I understood more later on after what my FTO did than I did right then and there. And that to me showed me how much I grew and how much I learned. And those experiences like that were just things. It was every day. Every day I learned something new. Every day I figured out where to go. And you talk about a story. You asked me this question. I'm sorry I kind of deferred from it, but there's an incident in a 3900 block of Delore. My partner, Bridget, God, we're still good friends. Her and I were riding together, and we get a call for a robbery right there, and we pull up, and there's this 10 or 11-year-old kid who had just gotten a brand new bike for his birthday. And he's standing there, and he's trying not to cry in front of us. He's holding it in, and he can't speak because he's holding it, okay? And his dad said, yeah, he was riding his bike, and a few boys jumped him down the street, and they took his bike from him, and he's been wanting that bike for a long time. And you could just, the tear in his eye. And I looked him dead in the eye, and I go, I'm going to go get your bike back. And his face just kind of lit up, and I go, I'll be back. Turn around and get in the car. My partner, Bridget, she smacks me upside the head. She goes, what the are you doing? She goes, there's no way you're going to find this bike. I go, Bridget, we're going to find this freaking bike. So we drive down the street, we come around the corner, and we see a couple kids, and I go, hey, yeah, where are they at? What? Where are they at? And he just kind of stood there. And I go, if I get out of the car, you're in the trunk. Where are they at? They're down there. And so I go, which one? He goes, fifth one down. So we go down to these apartments. And sure enough, we get out, and Bridget's like, what are you doing? I go, come on. So we go and we look at the side, and they had a basement under these apartments. And we go down there, and I can hear them. And they're talking. And I go, I just put like Bridget, like, be quiet for a second. I walk in the room, and there's 4 of them, and they're disassembling this bike, and there's like 9 different bike parts in there. And I go, gentlemen, guess who's going to jail today? And their faces all just like, I go, but before we do anything, we're going to put that bike back together before I beat you all like the children I don't have. Now start doing it. Now, I used to say stuff like that, not that I would ever do those things, but, it's just kind of a thing to say to people that, you just kind of got their attention. I used to call it attention getter. So these kids put this bike back together, and I look at all of them, and I go, are you ready? And so we handcuff them together, and we put them in our car, and I put the bike in the trunk of the car, and Bridget's just looking at me like, I can't believe you found this freaking kid's bike. So we drive back to the scene, and I go up and knock on the door, and I got the bike, I got the bike out of the trunk, and the kid, he gets there, and he's like, oh my God, you got my bike. I go, yeah, I did. I go, hold on a minute, come on down here. And so he comes down to the police car, and I said, here. And they look at him, and I go, you gentlemen have something to say? And they just looked at me, and I go, if I have to say it for you, you're not going to like me. And they go, we're sorry. Great. You see this boy? Yeah. If he has another problem, I'm finding you. And I closed the door, and the kid was just so excited. Like he was just, like you could just see it on his face, and it was the best feeling ever. And we got in the car, and we drove these kids up to the station, and we turned them over to their parents. And I remember Bridget at the end of the day, she looked at me, and she goes, I, first of all, can't believe you found that bike. She goes, that's just insane to me. She goes, but number 2, did you see a look on that kid's face? I go, yeah, that was awesome, wasn't it? And like right then and there, it's like, I knew I picked the right job. Like I knew that was for me. It was awesome.
How soon into your job was this?
Less than a year. Less than a year.
That set the tone a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
What were some other tone setters that got you prepared for the rest?
So I won't get into real specifics, but when I started, policemen were still heavy-handed on things, and some were and some weren't. It was right after Rodney King.
Okay.
You know, and there was just a formula of the way to do things. So if you think of a policeman as like being a parent, you know, 5-year-old kids throw temper in different ways. You know, some of them need to be sit in the corner, some of them maybe a smack on the butt. You know, there's just that variety of things. And so I remember there was a policeman that I was with, and we had it was a pretty rough scene, and there was a resisting there, and the policeman was pretty mad about it, and he smacked this guy right as they were putting handcuffs on him. And I'm like, okay, like that to me in my head was like, that's wrong. You don't do those things. And he goes back to, you know, and you could see the look in his face, and you know he's angry. And I just kind of walked over to him, and I get it. Remind me, I got a year on if I got that many, right? And they're like, and he's like, man, I'm all, you know, and he's cursing at him all this. And I walk over and I just kind of go, hey man, I got this. Like I got him. I'll take care of it. You know, go walk away. And it was kind of like, well, that's my prisoner. I go, yeah, I know, but I got this.
Yeah.
You know, and I kind of shield myself between him and them. And what I realized with that is that policemen are human. You just think about the last time you lost your temper. And I mean lost it. Because somebody's just either not doing what they told you to do, or they're just that disrespectful to you. And you have to watch yourself. And I think that there's a lot of people that don't ever get in that situation, so they don't know how they're going to react. And as first responders, we're in those every day, 20, 30 times a day. And over time, you have to learn to control that part of you. And that's where where I started seeing that the amount of stress that you're under pushes that button farther towards the way you don't want to act than the way you should act. And so that's why policemen need breaks from stuff. So I believe at that point in time in my life, I stopped this policeman from making a really bad decision. You know, not that he ever would have been found out about it, right? Let's just not even look at it at that point, but making a bad decision that later on would have affected not only his career, but affected him, and would have affected the suspect that we had in custody. And it was like, okay, you know, like I'm not going to be that guy. Like that's not the guy I'm going to be. You know, there were several incidents like that. And that was the one thing that after, I want to say 8 months, that no matter what happened to me, I would never change who I was. Like I would never change my values for who I am. Like if I knew something was wrong, it was going to stay wrong, no matter whether it was popular or not. And there's this time I'll go forward. I was a sergeant. We had a kid that was, I think he was 17 or 18 at the time, and he was throwing eggs at police cars, and he hit my guys' cars about 5 times, and they were all ticked off, like they're mad, you know.
Classic.
Stupid crap, right?
Right.
And so the kid, he threw eggs at a car, and you know, of course, I'm down the street, and we chase him and we catch him, and my guys show up, and they're ready to kill him. Like they're ready to kill him. And they're like, Sarge, let's take him behind the shed. Come on, let's do this. There ain't nobody watching. I'm like, nah, I got this. And I put him in the car, and we drove off. We did our thing, you know. And the guys came up to me, and they're like, why didn't you let us do this? Or why couldn't we smack him? Why couldn't we take in some of the eggs that he had and throw it at him? And, you know, like, let's get him, you know, let's do this, let's do that, you know. And, you know, it's typical tit for tat, right? It's tit for tat stuff. And I kind of looked at him, and I said, hey, aren't we supposed to be the bigger people here? Man, screw him. This is bullshit. You know, how can, you know, and they go, all they're going to do is send him home. That's exactly what they did. They sent him home. Like, you know, nothing really happened to him, right? And they're like, man, he's going to do it again, this, that, and the other thing, blah, 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 blah. And I'm laughing at them because I know what they're saying is like, yeah, I get it. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't have kids at the time. Like, I get it. I understand what you're saying. But you can't let that pettiness change who you are because it makes you feel better. And they all looked at me and they go, well, I just don't think you made the right call. And I go, that's great. That's why you work for me. Because I don't get to make popular calls. And for a couple of weeks, those guys were bitter at me for that. And then eventually it went away, and they all realized that probably I made the right decision, and half of them probably all forgot about it. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I doubt they're at home right now. Go, man, that guy threw the eggs at me.
Well, after they hear this, they probably actually, I remember
They
that.
bring it back. Yeah. Never had egg. Every time they go to a breakfast place, they're getting pancakes. You know, they're going egg.
No bacon.
Do you notice, or was it ever hard for you to kind of,
When you go back home, was it tough for you to kind of were you able to turn that off as far as always feeling like you always had to be alert and stuff? Or is that just kind of something that day to day still you're always kind of analyzing? And
Well, it's really different now. So before certain situations, yeah, I got home, I could turn it off. Though bad days filtered over. Okay. Your temper would be up. Sometimes I would yell at my wife over dumb stuff, or I would, a lot of times when I was single, I would go home and go to bed. 7:15 at night, I'd go to bed. Or 2:18 in the morning when I got off work, I'd go to bed. And it was just, it was dumb. Probably should have done something to get rid of it. But the reality of life is every policeman compartmentalizes what happens to them. They take it in and they hold it in. Okay. And so I'll go into my marriage. When I got married, I really compartmentalized a lot of the stuff that happened to me, a lot of stuff I saw, because I didn't want to share that with anybody. It's way different when you have a 2-year-old son and you go behind a bush and you find a dead, naked 2-year-old boy that looks just like your son, and you have to guard him and you have to watch them do the things that they need to do to process the scene. And you're standing there and all you do is sit there and think about your own son. And you're like, how can somebody do this? And then you have to go home and you have to see your kids and your wife, and you have to act like you never saw that. And that right there was the most real thing in my career that still haunts me to this day. Because my son now is 15, and I see that little boy in him every day. And he doesn't know that. My wife doesn't know that. And it's hard because I don't want to share that with him. And it was all because some mom didn't want her son because she thought he was a burden. I adopted 2 kids. My 2 first kids are adopted. So it's like, how selfish of you to say that when there's so many people trying to have children that can't, that you could have just said, you know what, somebody else would have loved him. And that's the challenge. That's a challenge in life. And so, that was before my shooting. And then after my shooting, now I am a lot more paranoid in large crowds, around a lot of people I don't know. I have to have an exit. Some policemen are that way when they're working or when they're not. I was never that way. I felt comfortable enough to know that I could handle myself. And then after I got shot, I realized I couldn't handle myself and everything. And so it became a little bit more of a reality. So that's why you get the split between the two of them. That's why a lot of policemen want to face a door, sit by an exit, not be in large crowds. It's just because you as a cop, you're prepared for anything in the world to come at you, because you just don't know when you walk into a scene, and you've got to be prepared for those things. And when you're not, you're not. And when it hits you, it smacks you across the face pretty hard. So
did you just gaining more experience and stuff, mentioning going to just going straight to sleep or whatever? Did you start to find a few, like whether it's working out or something like that? Was there anything that kind of, I know working out's always the classic that people say, but something that.
Well, I'll address that with you. Working out to me is a chore. It's a flat out chore. Okay. Oh, I hate it.
Right.
Yeah, I hate it more than writing accidents. Okay. And you'll understand when you write accidents. Like I hate it. I hated accidents. Okay. But what I found is, it's probably the best thing that you could do to help you. So when I said I went home and went to sleep, Imagine this in 8 hours. You have over 100 adrenaline dumps in 8 hours, where you are going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down for 8 hours. It's exhausting,
Yeah.
right? So I'll give you a great story. My youngest brother came and rode with me, okay? And it was just one of those days, and it was here in the 2nd District in the city of St. Louis. That was called the Retirement District when he came to ride with me. There wasn't a lot going on. The first call on the box is a person's truck at McCausland and 40. So we run lights and sirens up there. We get there. The car that's got the call gets there, and we start writing it. Okay, we're there maybe 15 or 20 minutes. We're helping to clear the scene up. Next thing you know, any car returning, accident with injuries, Hampton and Gravois, possible person trapped. So it's 8-9 miles. We get that call. We run code 1 to that, which is lights and sirens. And then we get to that call, and of course, the person that's area is, they're going to write it. They all know that I have my brother, so they are trying to keep reports from me, okay? And we get there, and we clear that scene. And, my brother's, he's there. He's just kind of standing around because he was thinking about being a policeman. And then we turn around, and I think we were driving down Gravois Hampton, and I run a plate on the car, and he's got bad plates, so I pull him over. The guy's got like 12 bench warrants, and no insurance and all this. And I'm like, do I write him tickets? Do I not write him tickets? And my brother's like, what are you going to do? I go, I think I'm just going to let him go. I go, I want to throw him back in. I just kind of want to throw him back in, And so we throw him back into the woods, and I drive down the street. We had a call for a disturbance between neighbors. One neighbor doesn't like the fact that their car's parked too close to the other car. Well, it's a city street, We solved that problem, and then I think we go to see a business owner that I knew and said hi to him, and then we get to a domestic. We go to this domestic over on Hill, and the guy we lock up is fighting us, and he's fighting hard, and it takes me and my partner everything we have. This is before tasers, so we're wailing. He's wailing us, and we're wailing him, and we finally get him into custody, and he's spitting on us and all this stuff, and you're agitated. Somebody spits on you. That's a pretty personal thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have to take him right down to the Justice Center, and we get him down there, and I take my brother. Now, this is the old headquarters building that was built in 1927. That's where the holdover was, and I put my brother in a cell for a little bit, and I said, I'll be back to get you. He's by himself. Like, I knew he was okay. Right. And then we book this guy. We come back out. My brother's like, oh, my God, the smell. I go, yeah, if we could bottle that up, we could sell it as cologne, and people would love it. He's like, it stinks. I go, yeah, I know. He goes, did you see there were people sleeping on the floor. He goes, that floor is nasty. I go, you sleep anywhere when you're tired. I go, Pete, there's guys that used to call you and say, book me today. I want to sleep this weekend. And you book them in so they could sleep on the steel. They used to call it steel because they were steel beds. I will go sleep on a steel. Can you put me on a bed? Can you put me in a bed tonight? I'm going to sleep on a steel. You got any warrants? I think so. Yeah, you got 4. All right, man. Come on, let's go. They wanted to go.
Because they were homeless?
No, I think they didn't want to go home and deal with their wives, or they were tired. They had no other place to sleep. They were like, I just want to go down to jail, Yeah. And so we get back in the car with my brother, and he's like, okay, I don't want to ever experience that again. And I'm laughing. I'm like, hey, how are things going? And he's like, great. And so we handle a few more calls, and then we get a call off of Watson and Arsenal for 2 brothers fighting. And I'm the first one on the scene, and one brother has a knife, and the other brother has a baseball bat in the front lawn of this house. And I throw the car in park as it's still moving. So you got the that's why policemen drop transmissions so fast, like, that's not good. Right. And my brother says, we talked about it later on, but I apparently get out of the car and I draw my weapon and I'm screaming, get on the ground. And they both turn and look at me, and the guy with the bat kind of drops the bat, but the guy with the knife kind of holds it, and he's looking at me. And now I'm probably 2 yards away from him, front yard from the city away from him. And I'm screaming at him to put the knife down. And he's kind of like, when people are in their own world and you're yelling commands, it takes a few seconds for things to start registering. And so my brother says, you sounded like somebody I never heard in my life before. He goes, but I knew you were my brother. He goes, don't take this the wrong way, but he goes, I thought you were some kind of God speaking to these people with the authority in your voice. He goes, it was insane to me. He goes, I've known you my whole life, and I've never seen that before. And the guy finally turns and he drops the knife, and I run over and I put him in handcuffs, and I put the other brother in handcuffs, and then we deal with the scene. But while I'm there and the troops are coming, my brother's still sitting in the car with his hands on the dash watching me. And when the cops get there, my friends, and we're there, it's probably a couple of minutes, and I realize my brother's not there. Because, you got to run through scenes, you got to go through all this stuff. And I knew I was going to have to write all this crap. And I look at my brother, and he's still sitting there. I go, come on. He's like, no, I'm good. Like, he's shaking his head in the car, like, no, I'm good. And I get in the car. They take this guy to the station. It's like 1:30 in the morning. I knew I was going to have to write. So I had to write a report, no big deal. But I took my brother back to my apartment. And we get back there. I go, why don't you get out? He goes, I'm good. I go, you good? You good to get in the house? He's like, yeah. He goes, I'll see you when you get home. When I got home about 4:30 in the morning, he was asleep. We woke up about 9, but he didn't talk about it until later on. But like when he told me that, I never really thought about that. And he goes, you just became this different person. And he says to me, he goes, that point in my life, I knew I could never be a policeman because I could never find that gear to get done what needed to get done in order to stop that from happening. He goes, I'm thankful you didn't shoot him. He goes, I was so worried you were going to shoot him. And I go, I never thought about shooting him. Like that never crossed my mind to shoot him. All I wanted him to do was drop the knife. And I go, and at that point, it had just become such nature to me that when somebody had a weapon, especially a deadly weapon, was to draw that gun. He goes, I never saw you pull the gun out of your holster. He goes, all I saw was you get out. I thought you were pointing your hand at him. He goes, it was your gun. It's like, I had no idea you pulled it out that fast. And I go, it's just routine. That's where things come from. So that to me, those are things that you just like, we talk about that. And that's how much of an adrenaline jump you can get. And then you got to turn it off and go to the next call. And you go from this side to this side. You go to an accident where somebody's killed and you're doing CPR to save their life. And then you leave that scene and you're going because two neighbors can't get along because the tree's hanging over their fence. That's the extreme of it.
Yeah.
Are you earlier you mentioned the older cops get more cynical the older they get. Are you still cynical?
Oh yeah.
You are?
Oh yeah. I mean, but it's because policemen deal with the stress in their life, probably 90% of them, with humor. And the reason you do that is because you're trying to minimize the impact on you. Okay? Just a homicide scene. One of the homicide incidents I had right there between Jennings and the city, there was a guy shot. He's still standing there, dead. His positioning when he got hit by the bullet.
Wow.
He died standing, literally. And he's got 1 foot in Jennings and 1 foot in the city. And the Jennings detective I knew pulls up. I pull up. I go, hey, I think he's in your venue. No, he's in your venue. No, he's in your venue. He goes, he's 90% in your venue. I said, but if I push him, he's in your venue. Now, somebody's dead, and we're making fun of it about whose venue is going to be. Why? Because we knew how serious it was going to be. It doesn't matter to us, but it was our way of compartmentalizing it and saying that this isn't a real person, this isn't a real event. We need to do our job. We got to solve through it. So when you start using humor, everything starts to become humorous. And, we'll talk about my shooting, and I'll talk to you about how much I minimized it. And a lot of people relate with that. A lot of policemen relate with that. And the reason why I minimized it is because as a cop, what's my job? Help you. Nobody helps me. I help you. When there's danger, you're running. I'm going towards it. When there's a problem, you're calling me. I'm solving it. I'm not walking away from it. And so I had a problem, had a major problem. I was shot, and I didn't know how to handle it. So I was compartmentalizing it and dismissing it so that nobody else had to deal with it. And that was one of my biggest problems.
Can you take us through your shooting in as much detail as you would like to give?
So I do talk to policemen about my shooting. I will say this. I had 19 years on. I never in my life would have thought what happened to me happened to me. And I was never prepared for the seriousness of it. So to tell everybody, I was working a lot of overtime that month. My wife and I figured out we needed about $10,000 to pay for Christmas. And so we had 2 young kids, actually 3 kids. Take that back, I forget my son Henry. And we had to, we wanted new phones, and we had to probably buy a new computer, and because my computer was like 14 years old, and the kids wanted some electronic stuff, and we had bills to pay. And so I started working. I had sued the city of St. Louis and won overtime for sergeants, but they made this ridiculous hour of you had to work 171 hours before being paid. Now, normally in a month. So I would normally work 160 hours. So about 171, you had to work 11 for free. And then after you hit 171, then you would get overtime. But you couldn't take any time off except for your rec days, there's 8 of them in a month that you would get. So think about that. If you figure there's 20, just say there's standard 28 days in a month, you're working 20 of them. I was working 16 to 18 hour days for like 25 days straight when my incident happened. And it wore me out. So the morning of November 20th, 2016, I got to work. They were looking for a guy by the name of George Bush who had, they believe, shot and killed a locksmith. So in the 6,200 block or 6,400, maybe it's the 6,500 block of Scanlon. The night before, they had responded to a car in an alley. And when they got there, it was a car that was, I think it was taken in a carjacking. And they were returning it to the lady who owned the car. And they wanted a locksmith because she didn't have the keys to come do it. And the locksmith's like, I only accept cash. And so the policeman drove this lady to the ATM at about 4 a.m. to get cash, to get her car. And when they came back, the car was gone, the locksmith was gone. Like, all right, where'd it go? And then about 6:15 in the morning, right about when I came to work, they had located a van down in the 1st District, down by 55 in Germania. Just trying to just do the landmarks for people. He was burned up in the van in the middle of the field.
Body burned.
Body burned. He was a bullet in his head, I think it was. And so there was some policemen that were doing investigation stuff, and they tied this investigation to a guy from the house where this incident occurred, where they recovered the car, who I guess they had got some information that his name was George Bush, no relation to any of the presidents, but apparently he was the guy that was going around shooting a lot of people. That was his friends were saying that to the policeman. And so I never really gave any thought about it. So when we get there, we have a briefing. It's morning roll call for us. Policemen in their egos, everybody's trying to find this guy. And, and I'm trying to get my guys, like, we're handling radio calls. Like, you can look for him, but, let's just pay attention. And in the climate we were doing at that time was right after the Michael Brown stuff. So we were all riding 2-man except for me. I was a supervisor. And it was just a safety issue because there were so many things going on. They wanted you riding 2-man. So fast forward my day. I start my second shift. We get a call up at that house where the car was found in the back for burglars entering a building. And we get there, and there's about 8 of us. Some of us are in front, some of us are back. We approach the house pretty quietly. We go in, and we find 2 females and a male in the house. And so we start questioning them. And, of course, I'm off with this 16-year-old girl who has just sheer and utter disrespect for me. And so we live in a nicer part of St. Louis, right? So if you could imagine walking into the house and there's cigarette burns on the floor, empty beer bottles, bongs, drug paraphernalia all over this house. It's a flop house to me in the middle of this nice neighborhood. It's like, Jesus, you're 16. Like, she was smoking meth at 16. And I tell this to policemen. I never got angry. If I did, you knew it, right? So this 16-year-old girl was so disrespectful that she got ignorant with me. Ignorant to the point that I really just wanted to punch her. I did, because I was that mad at her. And I know I can't do that. But that was how I felt about it. And I even told her, I said, man, I'm going to find you when you turn 17, and we're going to give you an LID photo and some fingerprints so you can have this day to remember for the rest of your life. Because at 17, you had an adult record, you know. And, and then she kind of said a few things to me, and I kind of let it go. The other thing that's noteworthy, and it never proved out to be anything, was I was still letting her use her phone to text, is what I was doing. Probably shouldn't have done that, but I did. So we wrap up our investigation. We realize this isn't going anywhere. It's about 7:15 at night. And I tell all the guys before we leave, hey, this is the house where George has been at. You guys make sure you drive the wrong way on a one-way street, go down the alley, make sure you're not being followed. So they all did it. I was the last person to leave that house. I drove the wrong way down a one-way street. I made sure I drove through the alleys. And then I stopped at the UGAS, which is now, I guess it's Mobile on the Run, right. Circle K right there at Hampton and Filer. I went inside. I saw the Powerball was 353. First thought in my head was, I need that, right? I need that. So I bought a ticket. I think I went to the bathroom, and I may or may not have gotten a soda. I don't remember. And I get in the car, and the thing that I did was, my father was really proud of me being a policeman, but he hated the fact that I was a policeman. And the cool part that I found during my career in the police department was I had to find somebody other than a policeman to talk to. Because policemen will one-up each other all day long. You know, my story is better than your story. And then all you talk about is police work. So I would call my father. We were best friends. I talked to my dad probably 5 times a day. And I'll never forget. I get in the car, and he goes, hey, what's up? I go, man, dude, you got this fucking bitch pissed me off. You know, and he kind of snickered for a minute, and he goes, well, let me tell you what your mother did. And he starts talking about my mom, right? And it was the perfect deflection, right? It's a perfect deflection. And he was complaining about my mom. I don't even remember what it was about, but he was complaining about it. And I get back on Hampton Avenue, and as I'm going south on Hampton, I'm getting at Filer Avenue there. There's that intersection. I can turn left and go to the police station. Like, I can turn left, and I thought to myself, well, I'm listening to my dad. Like, I could go home. You're tired. You've been busting your ass all week. Let's get this thing done. Like, just, it's Sunday night. Start fresh. Tomorrow's Monday. You only got 4 days left to work, and then you're off for 2, and you'll be fine. Like, you can do this. And then it's Sunday night, and it's cold. And what happens on Sunday nights? They come out of the woodwork because it's cold. So they've been breaking into cars in our neighborhood. And I thought, I got to go through the neighborhood one more time. And that's what it meant to me. Like, that to me was just the essence of being a policeman, was taking one more step to make sure people were safe. I was going to do one more step to drive through our neighborhood that we live in to make sure that nobody was breaking into somebody's cars, to make sure that somebody didn't belong there. And it was important for me to do that. And it eventually cost me it. It cost me my job for doing that. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. So I continue southbound on Hampton, and I'm talking to my dad, not paying attention, which is bad for a policeman, right? Because you're always supposed to have your head on a swivel. And we get to Pernod Avenue in front of St. Joan of Arc's church. I'm on the west side of the street. I'm in the lane right next to the left turn lane. I'm about 5 cars back, and when I stop, or 3 cars back, when I stop the car, I realize I'm too close to the car in front of me. And I say right this to my father, shit, too close. He's like, what? I go, I'm too close to the car in front of me. He said, back up. Look in the rearview mirror. Car's too close. I said, I can't. I'm trapped. And he says, you'll be fine. Policemen learn to trust their guts. So every day you go to work, you have a headed gut argument with yourself through 8 hours. Is this guy bad? Oh, my gut's saying he's bad, but my head's saying he's not. Or my head's saying he's bad, but your gut's saying you're not. So you're evaluating things all day long. And so I feel trapped, and I'm convincing myself that I'm not trapped. Like, this isn't a big deal. The light's going to turn, no big deal. But my gut is screaming at me to leave. And this is before I even see the car. And I'm like, okay. And my dad's talking. And I'm not listening to him. And then I look over in the side view mirror, and I see the car coming down the suicide lane. And I knew he was traveling faster than traffic. And I knew he was moving. I knew this. Because you see enough speeders in your life, you can pick things up. And I immediately say to my dad, what the fuck's this guy doing? My dad's like, what's up? I said, you need to hold on a second. And so I put the phone on my right leg, right calf, and I closed my computer in the car. Ask me why? Couldn't tell you. I think it's the old school policing in me, because a computer in a car can backlight you. And I didn't want to be backlit because my gut was telling me. My gut was saying, you need to leave now. This is going to be bad. You need to leave. And my brain's like, no, it's okay. This is some South City Hoosier. For those of you who don't know, Hoosier's just a white piece of trash. That's what we call them in St. Louis. That doesn't realize I'm a policeman. And he doesn't see the police car. And he's speeding. And when he gets up to me, he's going to slow down. And he's going to wave at me like, oh, dude, sorry. I didn't know. Don't pull me over. I don't have a license or insurance, and my plates don't go to the car, but just don't pull me over, okay? I don't want the inconvenience. Like, that's going through my head. And as the car gets closer, my gut starts screaming even more at me to tell me to leave. That the thought that this was just a speeder left my body. And then the car arrives next to me, and when he slams on the brake, the front of the car nosedives down and comes to a complete stop. And his rear driver, or the rear passenger door, is even with my side view mirror. So then I'm like, oh, maybe it was just a speeder. And I see the window start to come down. So I figure he wants to say something to me. I take my eyes off him for a split second. And I look at the window regulator. I put my finger on it. When I look up, I see the butt of the gun coming up along the passenger's back of the front seat. And by the time I had registered it was a gun, he had already shot me. Like, I'd already been shot. So I knew there was a gun there. And then I got hit. I got hit right above my lip on the left side between my nose and my lip. Is where the first impact was at. And when I got shot, I had no idea I was shot. Like, I didn't even know what it was. I thought it was some baseball bat. And I remember launching back, and I lost my vision. And I'm like, what the? Like, I remember saying, like, what the fuck was that? And I'm sitting there, and the one thing you can't do as a policeman is not have a plan. You got to know your next move. Always. Because you'll be dead if you don't. So the first time in my career, I realized I didn't know my next move. But I didn't know if I was dead. And what I'm going to explain to you probably lasted less than 2 seconds. But it is probably the longest 2 seconds of my life. And things really slow down for you when that happens. So I am shot. I don't want to believe that I'm shot. And I can't see anything. And the first thought in your head is, am I dead? And then I'm like, I don't know if I'm dead, because I still have my thoughts about me. And then my vision comes back. And I am sitting at the stoplight facing southbound in Hampton. And the left arrow turns green to go eastbound on Pernod. And the car's still there. And he drives south, turns his blinker on, and goes eastbound on Pernod. And I'm like, okay, so I'm not dead, but like, what just happened?
Hmm.
And then the light turns green for southbound Hampton, and all the cars in front of me start to drive away. And as they're driving away, I don't know what's going on. So the first thought in my head was I didn't want to hurt anybody. So put the car in park. The second thought in my head was, where are you people going? Like, didn't you hear this? Didn't you see what happened? How can you leave? You know, like human nature, like how can you leave? And so it took me a long time to start realizing these things after my shooting. For the first time in my career as a policeman, I was afraid. I was afraid. The second thing is that I wanted to hide. My whole body wanted to climb under the dashboard of that car and hide. And to admit that to myself was hard enough. To stand in front of a room of policemen and tell them that, it's 10 times harder. Because that's not your job. You're not a coward. You don't fucking hide. The next thing I remember mostly about that moment is how alone I felt. How deathly alone I felt. And it is alone that I can't explain to anybody, but it is something that I never want anybody to experience. Like, you never want I would give my life to stop anybody from having that feeling. That's how bad it was for me. And I don't really talk about it, but the other thing that I remember is just that pure sense of evil that was there. And, you know, I'm a Catholic kid, so I've experienced that twice in my career. That was the second time. And I thought to myself, like, why am I in this? Like, what did I do to deserve what happened to me? I'm a good policeman. I'm fair. I'm honest. I'm funny. I generally care for the people that I'm with. How can somebody put me in this position? Like, what is the point of this? And with that, you know, all those thoughts are going through my head, and I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I gave a TV interview probably, I think, a month after my shooting where I said I was getting my gun out and I was going to protect myself. And that wasn't right. That was me trying to remember it the way I thought it happened. It wasn't the way it happened. So as I'm sitting there collecting my thoughts, I hear on the window. And I look to my left, and there's a guy standing there, and he says, "Hey, officer, do you need help?" And it clicks. Oh, yeah, I'm a policeman. Yeah, I do. I've been shot or something happened to me. Can you get me some help? I'd really love some help. And then I realized that I'm in a marked police car, grab that radio, and I grabbed the radio, and you heard it, Hampton and Pernod, Hampton and Pernod. And what I don't know at that time, and which I did know at that time, was I actually, after I got done yelling where I was, I fell forward to the right on top of the closed computer and passed out. Never knew that. But in my mind, I was still trying to figure out what was going on. I thought I was conscious the whole time, and I wasn't. So the aid call goes out for me. The first person on scene is my great friend Kevin. So I, just to pose the thing to you guys are good friends. Could you walk in on each other being shot and know how to handle that? It's hard.
It'd be tough.
And policemen, when you don't know the guy that well, it's a little easier. But when you're good friends with him, it's a lot harder. And I think Kevin was a little taken back by it when he saw me. Because if you think about when he saw me, my right side is down, and where I got shot is in my left face, and I'm covered with blood. When Kevin gets on the scene, they see the car, and he goes, and I've talked to Kevin, he's like, we didn't know where you were. Like, we had no idea where you were, right? And so he goes, we walk up to the car, and he goes, I shine my flashlight in, and he goes, I see you laying at a computer. And the first thought out of my head was, oh, fuck, he's dead. And he goes, I said it out loud. Well, my father's still on the phone.
That's what I was going to ask.
And my dad hears it.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay? So we'll talk about my dad in a minute. So Kevin, he gets on the radio, and asking for an ambulance. And then the next guy, Stefan, shows up and he sees me and Kevin gets done reciting it and Steve gets on the radio and he's screaming for an ambulance. And there's a senior policeman there, and I'm not going to say his name. He goes, put him in the car. We'll take him ourselves. And so they open the door and they start to pull me out and I wake up. I come to. So now this is where things get different. I know I've been hurt, but I know that I'm still functioning in life, right? I'm like, I don't know if half my face is missing, but I know that I'm still here. So what am I going to do? I know these guys are going to worry about me. So they wake me up. As they're getting me out of the car, the first thing I say to them is, sorry guys, I just ate. And I said, Kevin kind of like, what? I was worried about how heavy I was. I didn't want them carrying me. I mean, I was overweight at the time. I was like 250. And I'm like, I don't want you carrying me. And so they're pulling me out of the car. They're pulling me out of the car, and I go, I'll walk. And I know Kevin's like, this motherfucker's talking. Like, shit. And so they literally helped me walk to the police car, and they put me in the back of the car, and I smacked my head on a shotgun rack. And they pull me out, they smack my head again. I'm like, I'll get in myself. So I climb in the back of this police car. Kevin runs around, gets in the passenger side, and they take off. And so I'm laying in the back of this police car as we're going. Now, the radio traffic for the police department is insane at this point, and I can hear it, but I'm kind of ignoring it. I have my eyes closed because my eyes hurt, and I don't want to look at anything, because it's just the light is really bothering them. And I don't know what's missing, but I know I can talk. I don't know if I'm going to die or not die. So as we're driving to the hospital, it starts to occur to me that I may die. Like that thought finally pops in my head. And at the time I tell Kevin, I said, dude, promise me. Just promise me you'll take care of my kids. Like take care of my kids, take care of my wife. I go, like, they can't be by themselves. Like they're not going to last. It's a little arrogant of me, but it was just the way I felt. Right. And Kevin, remember Kevin going, you'll be fucking fine. Shut up. Okay. And so when I'm laying there, he's telling me to open my eyes because he doesn't want me to go to sleep because he's afraid I won't wake up. Mm. And I'm telling him I'm resting my eyes because they hurt and I'm not going anywhere. So we're having a little bit of an argument and he finally just stops. And we hit Columbia at Hampton and we get airborne and the car lands and the accident of the car kicks out. And I'm like, Jesus, don't freaking kill me before we get to the hospital, guys. Come on. And then we continue northbound on Hampton towards Barnes Hospital. And I remember, I just remember hearing all the radio traffic. Like you can hear the concerns in their voices and how worried they are. And it's like, I feel guilty because they're feeling that. So as we get on Highway 40, I realize I need to tell everybody I'm okay. So I key up on the radio. I go, hey guys, it's no big deal. It's just the face. It's no big deal. Exactly what I said. And I get to the hospital and they pull me out and they put me on the gurney the wrong way. And I look up and the first person I see is a guy that used to work with me in narcotics, Charlie Johnson. And I go, hey Charlie, what are you doing here? Just like that. He goes, well, I'm going to save your dumb ass, but we got to put you on the gurney the right way. So they pick me up, they spin me around, they put me on this gurney. They wheel me into trauma room 1 at Barnes, and there's a nurse standing there, and it's a blonde-haired girl, and they pull up to her, and she's standing in the middle of this room with all this equipment. She's by herself, and they put the head of the bed right at her legs, and she puts her hands down on my face, and she puts her hands like this on my face, and she says, and she looks me dead in the eye, and she goes, you're safe now, babe. We got you. And I remember that was the first time that I felt safe. And I teased the policeman. I said, I would have married her right then and there and given her anything she wanted, even though I was married. Like I was going to give her the world for that, right? So they come in, they start doing their process, and in a trauma, they start cutting your clothes off, right? I know this, but I also know how policemen are. They're notorious for giving you shit forever. So I know that they're going to expose every part of my body.
That's where I'd be worried for myself.
That's what I said. So I look at this nurse. Look at this nurse. Shrinkage, right? Yeah. I look at this nurse and I said, "They're about to expose my sunshine." I go, "It's my sunshine, and I get to determine who sees it. Please find me a sheet before these pricks come in this room." And she did.
Nice.
And she put this sheet over me. And then the doctor starts doing his exam. And for some reason, when you have trauma, they want to check every orifice to make sure it works. And so they roll me on the side. And the doctor says, "I got to check this." And I go, "No, you don't." He goes, "Yes, I do." I go, "Doc, I got shot in the face, not in the ass. That works just fine. Don't touch me." One of the guys in the room said, "Man," he goes, "I was afraid of you after you said that." I go, "Why?" He goes, "The tone in your voice." I knew. I knew. Like I knew. I don't know, you know. And so then with that, they wheel me off to CT, right? So let's go backwards and we'll talk about my dad. Okay, so a little bit about my dad. August of 21, my dad died diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And so that was really hard for me. And we were up visiting him. And my father and I never talked about my shooting. So I said, "Hey, can we talk about my shooting?" I go, "It's been about 4 or 5 years ago. I go, I want to know what you remember about it." I go, I go, "I know you don't like talking about it." I go, but it's going to give me some closure, and I kind of I need this from you." And he goes, "Well, I wrote you that letter." And I go, "Yeah, but I can't read that letter. I can't read it." "Why not?" "Come on, Dad." "Really?" I said, "I'll read it when I'm ready to read it." I go, "I'm not ready to read that yet."
You've never read it?
Never read it. Still have it. And so he says to me, he goes, "Okay, you got 30 minutes. And I said, "Okay." I go, "What do you remember?" He goes, "Okay. Real?" Just like that. He goes, "Real?" I go, "Yeah, real, Dad." And I've probably seen my dad cry twice in his life, and he gets all misty-eyed on me. And I'm like, "Dude," and he goes, "I'm not going to look at you, but I'm going to tell you what it is." And so I wanted people at home who are seeing this on camera, I have to look down to say this because it's too hard. So my father says to me, he goes, "I heard a commotion in your car." He goes, "And I didn't know what happened." He goes, "And then it's quiet." And he goes, "And then I hear you whimpering, asking for help." Like, I don't remember that. And he goes, "Just think of you when you were a 5-year-old boy, and if you fell off your bike and you broke your arm, and I'm not there to help you, and you're by your friends, and you're trying to stay calm. You're trying to be tough, but you know how hurt you really are, and you want somebody there that you can trust to fix it. That's what I see. That's what I hear." And he goes, "And I can't get to you." He goes, "As a parent, that is the hardest thing in the world, when you realize your children are in help, they need help, and you can't fix it. Because all I see you as a 5-year-old boy who needs my help, and I cannot save you." He goes, "You will know that." And I said, "Yeah, I do." And he's got tears running down his face, and he goes, "I didn't know what to do." And he goes, "So I did what I thought I should do." He goes, "I called my brother, and he didn't answer the phone. He called my mom's sister, and she didn't answer the phone." And he goes, "All I wanted to do was get you help. So that's why I called your wife. And I told her when she answered the phone that you were hurt. I knew you were hurt, and I had no idea where you were. And there was nothing in this world that was going to stop me from getting you help." And I told her that. She said, "Okay," and she hung the phone up, and I think she called 911. She did. And it's hard. And when you really put that way to people, it totally makes sense. Before my father told me that story, I would tell policemen that my father wanted to help me. So he was going to call 911 in Omaha, Nebraska, and realized that was no help. So he called his brother who didn't answer the phone. He called his sister-in-law who didn't answer the phone. He goes, "Oh, let's just call his wife," like it was no big deal. I kind of made a joke out of the deal. And some people would laugh, but some people were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you called your wife." After hearing that, I don't say that anymore. Like, I don't even bring it up. I talk about this because this is the real part of it. And that to me is probably the best gift my father ever gave me, because I know at that point in my life, not only how much I was loved by him, but how much he respected me for the job that I did, that the man that I had become, and that he wanted nothing but the best for me. And I see that every day for my children. And that is probably the best thing that I have from him right now. So we talk about a few other things, and I'm going to kind of go back and forth here. So they wheel me out of CT, and I come back in, and my wife's there. And so I have to minimize this for my wife. So I look her dead in the eye, and I go, "Chicks dig scars. Do you think I look better now?"
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. And she goes, she says, like, she doesn't know what to say to me. She just kind of stares at me, and she starts welling up with these tears. And I think I remember saying, like, don't cry. I'm good. I got this. And that was just me being that I didn't want her to worry. I didn't want anybody around me worrying. I didn't want anybody worried about me. I got myself into this mess, and I'm going to get myself out of this mess. Like, that was my mentality, because that's how you thought as a policeman. Like, I'm here to fix the problem. This is the problem, and I'm going to fix it. I am still that person to this day. I fix problems. I'm the fixer. I'm not a policeman. I'm a fixer. So the doctors start talking to me, and I go, "Hey, give me a second." And he goes, "What?" I go, "Give me a phone." "What the hell you need a phone for?" Like, "Give me a phone." And Margaret looks at me, and I go, "Give me your fucking phone." She's like, "Oh, okay." She hands me her phone, and I call my father. And he answers the phone. He goes, "Margaret, how is he?" And I go, "Dad, I'm just fine." Oh, my God. You guys, I mean, I don't know how close you're. I heard that sigh on the other end of that phone. I know my father hit the floor. I know it to this day. And I remember that. Like, I still remember that feeling. And I remember turning into that 5-year-old boy on that phone. And I said, "You gotta come here, and you gotta be with me, please." And I remember he's like, my voice is now. He's like, "Okay, I'm coming." And it was that instant. And I mean, I'm living it right now. Like, I remember that. And I hung up the phone, and I'll never, that will never leave me. That emotion will never leave me. And that emotion is what, that keeps me where I need to be some days. And the police wives in St. Louis, they organized a trail between the Nebraska Highway Patrol, Iowa Highway Patrol, and the Missouri Highway Patrol to drive my parents in town. And they did in 5 hours. My parents got here. And it was awesome. And so,
Do you remember what you first said to them when they got there? Were you still kind of
so my parents got in about, I got released from the hospital a little bit later on. They got in about 5:30 in the morning, and I think they were tired, so they laid down for a little bit, and they came over about 8. And I remember when my dad walked in the door, he didn't say one word to me, and I didn't say one word to him, and he just, the hug of, like, "I haven't seen you forever," or "I haven't," and it was there. My mom was crying. She hugged me. But I think once my parents realized, like, I was going to be okay, that part of the emotion came out. Like, it kind of disappeared, because then it was like, okay, everything's okay. It's like, it's worrying, like, if you're going to come around the corner, is the car there or not there? Like, that's the kind of, and then when they saw me, they're like, okay, this is going to be okay. Because, like, when I was in the hospital and they finished with me, it was about 3:00 in the morning, and the doctor walks in and he says, "Hey, we're going to send you home." And I go, "Really?" Like that. And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Do you need a note for work?" And I go, So me, you guys understand, like, I'm like you, Jack. I got to have a sense of humor. I'm like, yeah, it'd probably be a good idea. I probably need one, right?
Right.
So he comes back about 5 minutes later, and he hands me this note, and I'm looking at it, and it says, "Return to work in 3 days or sooner if symptoms improve." Okay?
Oh, that's nuts.
So I tell this to policemen, because it meant it meant so much to me at the time. When he handed me that letter, what do you guys think that just happened to me? What like in your head, what would you think?
When you get the letter?
Mm-hmm. Like you can return to work in 3 days or sooner if symptoms improve. What do you think? What do you think that?
I think, well, I just got shot in the face, so I'm not...
You're thinking, that's no big deal, right? Like, that's exactly how I felt. Like, he completely dismissed the shooting I had.
Was that a good thing, or was
A
that...
bad thing for me.
Yeah.
Really bad thing for me. What I found out later on, and I tell this policeman, was he was just discharging me from his care to give me to another doctor. Okay? But I didn't know that at the time because I'd never really been hurt at work. So it's like, I didn't know.
You thought you were just going in,
I thought
going out?
I thought it was like, hey, dude, no big deal. So I get 2 Band-Aids on my face. 2. And I walk out the door. And a good friend of mine, Mick O'Callahan, the Irish man that he is, drives me back to my house, right down Hampton Avenue,
Wow.
right past the scene. Nobody even knows it but me.
What was that like?
Hard. So I'm in the back seat of the car behind the driver, and we're coming down the street, and I know we're there, and I turn my back to the window, and I bunch up in a ball, and my wife picks it up. She's like, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm just stretching. My back hurts. You know, I didn't want anybody to know it. I was so fucking scared I couldn't fucking tell you. Like I knew. And then we pull in the Walgreens lot on Hampton, and we sit there, and I'm fucking staring at the scene, reliving it. Nobody pays attention. I get home, we come down the street in my house, and there's 8 policemen, and my really good friend Sam Vitale sitting there. And I get out of the car, and all their faces just fucking drop. They can't believe I'm standing there, right? Like holy shit. And I walk over to every one of them, and they're all standing there, and I go, hey guys, what's up? Nobody says a word to me. I go, well, yeah, I'll go home now. I'm fine. And I looked right at Sam, and I kissed him on the cheek, and I said, brother, I'm good. I'll call you tomorrow. And I walked to my house.
Man.
What happened? What happened to George Bush?
So during my time in the hospital, they believed it was George, and they brought in a photo spread, and I picked George out immediately. I never thought I saw the driver. I did. Knew exactly. But then I saw him, knew that was the guy that shot me. And that's the weird thing about police work is, you know, people are like, oh, all I saw was the gun. You put the person in front of them that held that gun, I guarantee they remember. Because I've had that. I was a detective for 4 years, so I know that. But they went out. They got up on his phone, and he had went down to the casino. He got a ride from some random person to his grandmother's house, which is literally a block from the scene on Scanlon Avenue. And as he was coming down the driveway, he sees an unmarked police car coming at him, and he opens up on him, but he doesn't see the 2 policemen across the street. So it was, I don't want to say I won't say their names, but one of them had an AR-15 and hit him 14 times in the heart, you know. And people are like, oh, isn't that excessive? I'm like, you know, when you're in a shooting or you're getting shot at, you're not counting bullets. All you're doing is firing until that threat stops. And the way a threat stops is by dropping. Okay. And so I always like to, well, after, you know, Ferguson, you would get into with these protesters, and they knew what was best for you. And you explained to them, I go, when's the last time you had to fight for your life? I go, I guarantee you the minute you'll understand exactly where we come from, because this happens to us every day. And, you know, they would ignore you for that. But yeah, so they had shot and killed George Bush right before I left the hospital. It was about 2:30 in the morning when all that went down. The one thing that I think I'm really proud of, and it sounds really kind of sad, is it's about 90 policemen came in off duty, not getting paid, to look for George.
Wow.
And what that says for me, I meant that I was a good policeman. Like, I did my job. I did it right. I did it honestly. I touched that many people's lives that they were willing to come in on their own time and do this. And they go, and you just think about what happens Monday night after my shooting, the prayer vigil. There's 10,000 people there. And we don't really talk about it, but what you have to talk about is like, how big of an impact on my community did I have if 10,000 people show up just to pray for me? Because at that time, nobody knew my condition except my family. And I wanted to leave my house and walk that line and thank every person standing there. And I remember this. I'm fighting with my dad, my mom, my wife, my aunts, my brothers. They're like, no, you're not going out there. This is stupid. You're going to get shot again. I'm like, no, I'm not. I wanted to find some way of thanking them for that. And it still bothers me that I wasn't able to do that. It's weird, but it's also speaks to my character. To me, I didn't want anybody burden over me. And if you guys really think about this, and I think if you do the research, there's never been another prayer vigil like that for policemen anywhere.
Was that at St. Gabriel? Yeah, I remember being down there actually. And did you say it was on a Monday?
24 hours later. I got shot Sunday night, 24 hours at St.
Well, a lot of people there. But what I remember hearing about it when it first happened, and I remember, so it was on a Sunday when it happened, and not that this is a great story or anything, but I remember being at the Guns and Hoses, and I remember at the time my brother and I were kind of, our relationship, we were kind of working on things, older brother and stuff. And as you can tell, you talk to me, I'm the emotional guy in the family, right? I'll tear up a little bit and stuff. And I've seen my brother cry probably 3 or 4 times. And I remember the fact that you showed up. I remember looking at my brother and he's bawling his eyes out, just recognizing, and I'm not trying to kiss your ass here, but just recognizing what a true man was, or is. And I remember looking at him and it caught me out of nowhere and he's bawling his eyes out. And I go, this is my older brother, a guy I look up to. And to see him have so much admiration for a guy he didn't even know, I was like, little do I know we'd be sitting down talking to each other now. But I just remember the fact that you showed up. I was like, that is a type of man I want to be someday.
We should talk about that because that almost didn't happen.
Going to Guns N' Roses?
Yeah.
Because that was the following week, right?
No.
Oh, okay.
I got shot Sunday. That was Wednesday night.
Jeez.
So, let's talk about Guns N' Hoses. So, it almost didn't happen because, for those of you that don't know, Guns N' Hoses is a organization that raises funds for policemen and firemen that are killed in the line of duty, or first responders, I should say. And they come in and they pay off your house, they pay off your cars, they pay off your credit cards, and they make sure that your kids have an education. And the reason they do that is because, we don't make a lot of money, and they're trying to take that burden off of the surviving spouse, which is a big deal. That year, we had a few policemen injured here in St. Louis, one of which was Mike Flavion. And Mike Flavion is a now retired Baldwin policeman. He was shot in the line of duty and is paralyzed from the neck down. He's lucky to be alive. And Backstoppers had stepped in and given some money to his wife to help with bills. And that was the first time that they had ever helped a critically injured officer. And they started back in the early 60s. And I think it spoke volumes. So it's Tuesday after my shooting. Wednesday is Guns N' Hoses. And Big Sammy Vitale calls me and says, hey, what are you doing? I go, if one more MFer shows up at my house and brings me something, I'm going to smack the crap out of him. Because everybody's bringing me food. Like, I don't need to eat food. I'm fat enough. Please don't bring any more food to my house, right? And he goes, I got a favor for you. And they go, anything, buddy? What do you need? He goes, Guns N' Hoses. I go, okay. He goes, yeah, you're going to go. I go, fuck, I am. And stuff like that. He goes, no, you don't understand, Tom. He goes, I'm being asked if you'll come. I go, Sam, that's for policemen that were killed. I'm not going to that. And he's like, no, you got to go to it. I said, no, I don't have to go to it. I'm not dead. I go, I should be dead. Kind of making a joke out of it. Like, I should be dead. I go, at least I know then my wife would be taken care of and my kids would have a really good Christmas. Like, that's exactly what I said to him. And he started laughing and he goes, no. He goes, Tom, he goes, you got to go to this. And I go, Sam, no, I don't. He goes, Tom, I'm going to say this to you, and I mean this in a very nice, loving way. You're an idiot. I go, well, I've been called worse, Sam. I mean, And he goes, Tom, people need good news. You're good news. if anything, with all the shit that's going on with law enforcement right now, why can't we make you a positive? And that rang with me for a minute, right? That rang with me for a minute. And I said, let me let you know. And he goes, okay, before I let you go, they want you and your dad to go. I said, okay. So I get off the phone. Of course, my wife wants to know. And I tell my wife, I go, hey, they're asking for me and my dad to go to Guns N' Roses. She goes, well, what about me? I go, you weren't invited. Now, part of that is me being angry about my shooting, and I didn't know it. I was angry at myself for saying yes. So I was taking it out on my wife. And my wife got all mad at me. And I remember, like, either throwing the phone or saying something silly. I go, well, why don't you, I said it was just like this, right in front of the kid, why don't you fucking call them and ask if we can go? Right now they're inviting me and I'm fucking going. Because I knew she didn't want me to go. And that was like throwing gasoline on a fire, right? Because that's the first time I realized that I was angry after my shooting. I was angry. And so it's an all-day argument, Tuesday, or a standoff, I should say, and then it goes into Wednesday. And as we're getting ready to go, my dad's going to go, I'm going to go. My wife looks at me and says, you have to be home by 7:30. I go, well, you're not my mother. And my mom looks at me and goes, you got to be home at 7:30.
You are my mother.
And I'm just like, okay. All right. I said, look, I'm not going to stay. I'm just going to go say hi to a few people, and then I'll come back. I'll probably be another 30 minutes. I didn't know they were going to bring me on the stage. I had no idea. I didn't know any of that. So we drive down, and I'm in Sam's car. We park behind the Savas Center, or the Enterprise Center now. Let's call it the right thing. And as I'm getting out of the car, Kevin Clinton is there, and he's one of the big owners of the beer stuff. And he looks me dead in the eye, and he goes, don't I know you? I don't know. I don't think we've ever met before. And Sam goes, hey, it's Sergeant Tom Lake. It's Lake. And then it hits him. Oh, you're that dude. What? Just like that. I started laughing. I go, yeah. I go, I'm that dude. He's like, I can't even tell. I go, yeah, I'm good. No big deal. I'm dismissing it to him. Because I don't know who he is. Very nice man, by the way, Mr. Clinton. I thank you very much. You were very, very nice to me. And if you ever watch this, thank you very much. It was neat because, yeah, it's a shout out. Because it was neat because I guess I felt bad because it kind of, like when you humble somebody in a room, it kind of humbled them. I know that man's a little bit more powerful than I am, so it's kind of weird when you humble somebody like that, and I was dismissing it. So we get out of the car, we walk in, we go in the police room, and I run into some policemen that I've known a long time, and their faces are all just like, like deer in headlights. Holy shit, what are you doing here? I go, I'm here to, rile up a few feathers, maybe make a few more donations, trying to get some cash out of people, just kind of being silly, right? The most important thing for me that night was introducing my dad to everybody. Yeah, my parents never really experienced what being a policeman was like, and so it was really important to me to have my dad kind of see that. So I think my dad met 60 people that night. It was crazy, right? And he was just overwhelmed. And a couple of the girl policemen who I knew, they were all hugging on my dad. We love your son. He's so great, And my dad's like, thanks. My dad didn't know how to handle it as much as I did. So with that, they're like, okay, let's go. And I looked back at Sam and I said, hey, you coming with me? He's like, nope, this is you, bro. And so Dotson comes in. He's the chief at the time, and Mike Diba's my captain. And I remember it's probably a little bit mean of me, but I did it anyway. Mike Diba, he's been my rock, and I love that man to death. And the chief looks at me, he says, I'm going to walk you out. And I go, no, you're not. And he just kind of looked at me, remind you, that's your big boss. And I'm like, yeah, you're not. I said, and I point right at Mike Diba. I go, he's walking me out because he's my fucking boss. And I answered him because he was my captain at the time. And Chief Dotson goes, okay. Kind of like, wow, really? And I remember Diba, he kind of grabbed my arm. And part of the reason why they were holding on to me is after my shooting, I had a bunch of fluid behind my ears that we hadn't found yet. And so my gait was off, and I look like a drunken sailor on a ship walking around, you know. And so we walk down these stairs to go out to like ice level, and we're coming through the tunnel where they bring the Zambonis if you're watching. And as I'm walking, there's a guy standing there, and he's drinking a beer. And as I walk past him, I see his jaw hit the floor. And I go, "Hey, what's up, dude?" Just like that, you know. It's kind of being a smart ass. And Diva turns around and goes, "You know who that was, don't you?" And I go, "No." He goes, "It's Chris Pronger." I go, "What?" You know, and I love hockey, so I turn around and I look at him. I'm sure as shit, that's Chris Pronger. You know, like I realize who it is, and I go, "Mr. Pronger, what's up, man? How you doing?" And he's just like with like a deer in headlights, like, okay, because he knew exactly who I was, right? And so we go up on the stage where they have set up, and this is the opening ceremony of Guns N' Roses, where they give a 10 count for the fallen. And early in October, Blake Schneider was killed in St. Louis County on a call. And I'm standing there behind the color guard, and there's a few people up in the stand that recognize me, and they're yelling at me, and I'm like just doing, waving my hand in the air, and I can't see anything. It's pitch black dark. And I'm looking through this curtain, and my dad's right behind me, and Donson's behind me, and Diva's holding my arm. And I'm looking like dead through it, and I see Elizabeth Schneider, which is Blake Schneider's wife, as she's ringing that bell. Bing! And it hits me. "Yeah, you shouldn't be here." So I look at Diva, I go, "We're leaving." He goes, "What?" I go, "We're leaving." He goes, "Shut up." I go, "Captain," I go, "I can't be here. This is not for me. I should not be here right now." And he goes, "Stand here and shut your mouth." And I didn't say another word to him, because he's my boss, right? I mean, you got to realize policemen are kind of, so I understand it. And I close my eyes, and I'm praying that it's over with. Like, just stop. And every time that bell rings, I flinch, because I know what it means. I know what it means. And with that, it's kind of loud in there, and I really can't hear it. And I kind of hear them start to introduce me. And Diva walks me out to Jasmine Huda. Love you, Jasmine. So, shout out there. Shout out. And the look on her face. And I can see she's surprised as hell to see me. So what I didn't realize was a lot of people, nobody knew I was coming. There's like 5 people knew I was coming. And when I walk on the stage and they put the spotlight on me, the crowd itself is overwhelming. It is overwhelming to tell you that. To tell you how you can be humbled as a person is to have somebody do that for you. Because that right there made me realize how big my shooting was. And then the emotion hits you. And so if you watch the video of it, I lose it. The emotion of my shooting hits me at that point. And so I start falling forward, because in real life, I want to lay on the ground in a ball and hide. I'm trying to hide from this. I don't want this feeling, because it's an over-sensing feeling of guilt that this happened to me. It's an overwhelming sense that I let somebody down, that I wasn't prepared for what happened to me. And I start crying. And that is just sheer emotion from my shooting exiting out of my body, and I have no control over it. And so I start like touching my heart and waving, and the reason I'm doing that is because it meant that much to me, and I could not speak. And it was my way of just telling everybody, like, thank you, that, that was just my way of being as humbled and as gratified, just like gratuity to people about how much that meant to me. And I'm still trying to fall forward to hide. And Diva's in my face going, get up, get up, get up. And I don't know how long I'm standing there. And then we walk off. And as we're walking off, more people are yelling at me. And I am walking towards the stairs. And we walk by Chris Pronger, and he looks at me and he goes, that was awesome. And I go, thank you. And I kept walking. And we go up the steps, we go back in the police room, and I look right at Sam and I go, we're leaving. And we get in the car and he drives me back to my house. I don't speak to anybody. And I go home and I go up in my room and I cry myself to sleep. And I slept for almost 2 days after that. And people are like, really? And I go, yeah. And that was just all of the crap from my shooting just fucking landed. It just landed right then and there. So, long and short of it is that Guns and Hoses for me, I think gave me a different perspective on my shooting. Because for me, it was like Guns and Hoses is all about people who are killed. Like I wasn't killed, you know? And it brought some real memories for me of survivor's guilt. You guys probably don't know this, but 12 policemen have been killed since I was a policeman. I knew 8 of them. Knew them well. And I'll take Tamaris Bohannon or even Antonio Scotty. What's Scotty's last? The kid that was just killed in the county, and the Ledbetter guys that were shot up there in North St. Louis, and kids that came on after me. It's like, well, why didn't I die to save them? Why didn't I die to stop them from having their thing to them? And guys that have been in situations like you get it. That's why I think veterans, there's so much suicide for veterans, is because, your duty when you sign up as a policeman is, are you willing to give your life up for this job? And, I'll sit in a room in an academy and ask the kids that. Every one of them will raise their hand. And then I'll look at them and go, okay, who's ready to lose their arm, their leg, their left arm, their eye, their right nut for this job, and then never do it again? You ain't so quick to sign up for that job. And that was something nobody ever tells you. And so, I still to this day carry survivor's guilt for being alive.
Not to backtrack here, but I was curious, when do you think, if ever, what do you think will finally allow you to read that letter from your dad?
It's a good question. So we didn't talk. My father passed away in August of 22. So it's been about 7 months ago. I think I'll be ready when I know that I am able to handle the challenges that hit me every day with my shooting. I'm still learning that curve. It's been 6 years. People don't remember who I am. I can walk in a room and talk in a police academy and nobody knows who I am or what happens to me. And then I tell them this story and it's all like, oh yeah, I remember that, And the cool thing about a story is that no matter how real or non-real it is, as you listen or hear it, you can distance yourself from it. For the person that's telling the story where it's real, you relive it. So it's actually very good for me to talk about it. But Jack, I don't have an answer for you on that. And I've had people walk up to me because I tell them that in the police academy, you should read it. You should read it. Your dad's dying, you should read it and all this. And I go, for me, I still want to be a policeman. I still want to help people. And I'm afraid if I read that letter, that will take that from me. And I don't want to lose that. It's stupid. It's probably the most craziest thing I can think in my head, but for some reason in my head, that letter stops me from having to worry about the shooting. It stops me from having the ability to push forward on it, the ability to try and find a way to fight my way back to doing a job I love that I'll never do again. Like my father saw me for the man that I am. And then if he tells me in the letter that I am to him, then I have to live to be that man. Not saying that I'm not, but then the reality is that if he never wanted me to be a policeman, and I'm shot because I was a policeman, and he tells you, well, maybe you should have done this job, or there's so many things. I mean, it sounds really funny, but it's like all those scenarios run through your head. It's like, think about this as a policeman. You are walking into a house and you are going to yourself, okay, if there's a guy at the front door, this is what I'm going to do. If there's a guy at the back door, this is what I'm going to do. This. It's all you're doing. It's all you're processing every day, every minute, every second that you're going to a call all the time. And that's what I did for 20 years of my life. And it is hard to turn it off. I don't turn it off. I mean, we're in a room and my back's to the door and it's driving me crazy, but we'll leave it alone. Like, I've learned to look past that, right? Because I know that if the door opens, I'm going to go right, because the door opens to the right, and I can use the door as a protective thing to kick the door back if a guy walks in here with a gun. It's like, really? Like, you guys never thought of that. Like, that never crossed your mind. It's crossed my mind the minute I sat down here. And you had no idea that I knew that, right? So there you go. Now I got you all thinking about it.
Like a Domino's guy or something. We ordered a pizza.
Perfect.
Let's blast them.
Yeah.
So was that mindset that you just talked about there, that has been there before you were a police officer? Is that what made you a good police officer, or has that been there once you started because of what you had seen?
Jack, that's a great question. So, no, I think it's inherently learned. So when you become a green-eyed police, so when I was a security guy, right, like I caught shoplifters for a living, it was all about hiding. Like, how can I get the best angle to? Oh yeah, there you go. Right. But what loss prevention taught me was how to read people. I mean, that's a huge part of police work. You have to read people. Like, I read people for a living. And so at 18, I started reading people, and I've been reading people ever since. And if you don't read people, if you're not reading people, then you're not human. But it's a different level when you get into law enforcement. Like, it's a completely different level. And so as I progressed in my police work, I learned how to read people better, and then I learned how to analyze situations better. So when I first started, I wasn't that bad, but as you move forward, I'm still that way. If you decided every morning that you wake up and you get coffee, right? Every morning it becomes a routine that you don't even think about. Police work, 8 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week, depending on, right now it's probably 7 for most policemen. Some of these guys are working 12. You're handling all of these things, and you realize it's second nature. I'm reading my kids when they get out of bed. I am reading the door when I open the door. I'm reading the car as I'm driving, what driver's doing what, how am I going to get here? I mean, it's all day, and it's just like drinking a cup of coffee. It's second nature.
How do you get out of that? Do you want to?
I think it's calmed down to some degree, but you don't ever get out of it. It's like putting your pants on in the morning. It's like putting your underwear on after you get out of the shower, after you dry off. I mean, it's a routine that you've done so many times in your life, it's hard to turn off. That's why when policemen retire, it's so hard for them. I retired and sat at home for 1.5 years, and I nearly lost my ever-living mind because I didn't know what to do with myself. And then I started coming out and talking about my shooting. And it was awesome because it helped me so much. And I've caught over 2,500 policemen. And of those 2,500, over 100 of them have fallen at my feet in tears and said, I need help. Please help me. I can't get past certain things in my life. I'm not a counselor. I won't ever be a counselor. But I have learned and gotten tools to do that. And so we direct them to where they want to go. And so what people don't pay attention to is it's more now about police officer wellness. They are coming out and talking more and more about PTSD or PTS, I should call it, and this trauma and the stress that happens in their life. Think about you two sitting here. Think about an incident that's happened to you that whether you were younger or a little bit older that you remember like it was yesterday, and you see that. That's trauma. That's trauma, and your body processes that. And as you get farther away from that trauma, right, you learn how to deal with it, and it doesn't affect you as much, okay? Every day for 8 hours, I'm experiencing trauma as a policeman. I come home and I have to turn it off so my kids don't see that. I get up the next day and I turn the trauma back on. You want to know why policemen are so screwed up? Do you want to know why policemen beat people for no reason? Do you want to know why policemen lose their temper? There's no outlet. I mean, let's talk about the city of St. Louis right now. They are so short policemen. These guys are working overtime, double shifts, 16 hours. It is insane. You are taxing them way more than they need to be, and there's no outlet. And you're in a job that somebody can Monday morning quarterback you forever. And now we're putting video on it forever. My wife wanted me to watch that Memphis thing that just came out here in St. Louis. I can't watch it. Because you know what I see? The trauma. I see the trauma coming out of these guys and what they're doing to this man. And I can't watch it. It's sad. It's sad on both parts. It's sad because those policemen couldn't figure out how to get help to stop that from happening. It's sad that an administration can't admit that they need to help these guys to stop that from happening. It's sad for the family that this happened to. There was no reason for it. But not one police department will come to you and tell you, oh, my guys need help. No, they're robots. They should have known better. They're at fault. This is their fault. They let this happen. They did this. They did, and I'm not trying to be controversial. I'm just trying to give you a different perspective to say, I don't know what these 5 policemen that just got fired in Memphis had seen. I don't know how long they've been on. Obviously, something that man did hit a point where they were triggered and they go. And I got the perfect example for you. I'm driving in my Jeep. I bought a Jeep after my shooting, and I take all the doors and windows off it, and I drive it because it's my freedom. Now, remind you, I was shot in a car, so when I'm in a car, I feel trapped. So having a Jeep and all the doors and windows off for me is great. And a car cuts me off going westbound on Chippewa from Kings Highway, and I honk my horn. I don't think anything of it. And I pull up to the light at Macklin. 3 people in the car, 2 of them point AK-47s at me, 9 months after my shooting. I froze. I panicked. Almost drove my Jeep into a pole. I made a right turn. I flew. I called 911, and I am hyperventilating on the phone, trying to explain to this woman what just happened, and I can barely talk to her. And I explained, I said, hey, this is Sergeant Tom Lake. I need some help. And she knows me, and she hears it. And she's like, I'm trying to get policemen to you. Where are you? And I'm driving. And I'm driving to my house. And I get a block from my house. And I pull over. And I fall out of my Jeep. And I'm crying on the ground in front of my neighbors uncontrollably because I can't handle the emotion that just hit me over something so fucking dumb. It's not even funny. And my good friend Greg shows up. And I'm crying in front of a policeman I knew for 20 years of my life. And I'm embarrassed by it. And I can't stop it. I cannot control it. My wife can't fix it. My kids get to see this. My neighbors get to see it. And they don't know what to do. And they don't know what happened. And I can't talk. And I remember Greg picks me up and they walk me in my house, and it takes me 40 minutes to finally get my shit together. But apparently, which I don't remember, was I was giving the description of them. I knew they pulled in the target, and they caught the guys. They caught them all. They interviewed him. You know what they said? You ready for this? Oh, well, we were just playing around.
Yeah, that's not a great excuse.
It's not a great, but it goes into, they had no idea who I was. They had no idea that I had been shot. They had no idea. When they found out who I was, every detective said they apologized. They said they were sorry. Sorry don't fix this. I tell my son that all the time. Sorry can't fix stuff. Because whatever happens, happens. And, Nobody really knows that story, but that happened to me.
Sure.
You know, and my wife was like, man, I didn't know what to do. I go, there was nothing you could do. And I thought I was doing so good, and it set me right back after that. It set me right back after that.
You still have the Jeep?
Damn right I do. I lifted it, put 35s on it. Now I got to re-gear it.
Nice.
You know, I can only get 60, but it still looks good driving around the park, man. Yeah. My daughter wants to drive it. It's a stick, so I'm the only one that can drive it. So
I can't.
Well,
I gotta learn.
you got to learn.
So what do we, Tom? What do we have here? These tokens.
Oh, so we'll talk about that real quick. So, Charlie Lowell is a sergeant in the city. He was working secondary and got ambushed. Some kids got by, shot him up there at the Cupcakery in the Central West End. It was about a year before my shooting. And he had some PTSD from it, and he wasn't sure how to handle it. And then he started looking into it. Well, my shooting happened, and to give you some brief history, when I came to the 2nd District after leaving Internal Affairs, there was 3 sergeants there. There was Sergeant Lowe and then Sergeant Lingard and myself. Sergeant Lingard was shot when he interrupted a burglary at his house, and he survived. Sergeant Lowell was shot while working secondary, and then I was shot. So all 3 of us from the same platoon in the same district were all shot, right? He had started calling me about a couple of days after my shooting, and he would say, "Hey, Charlie, what's up?" Like, there were so many policemen, I was kind of ignoring everybody because I wanted to be by myself. And he's like, "Hey, you're going to start experiencing some things that you probably don't know what they're going to do." And he goes, "If you need any help, just reach out and talk to me, blah, blah, blah." And, I ignored him for about a year. And then, like the shooting thing happened or the flourishing thing on the gun. And, I was just like, so finally, there's a point in my story that we'll get into at a later podcast, is when I found out I was broken. I was broke, and I needed to fix myself. And about 8 months after that point, I had called out to Charlie, and I said, "Hey, Charlie, everything you told me was right." I go, I felt so alone going through this week. He goes, "I felt the same way." He goes, "That's why I reached out to you." And he said, okay. So Charlie and I started collaborating because there is no place for anybody to talk about what happens to them, traumatic-wise. So Charlie and I, these coins are called Project HURT. And HURT is heal, uplift, restore, and transform. And Charlie and I thought, why not be a safe haven for first responders to come chat with us about what happens? Policemen are notorious for making fun of you, of other people and of themselves, and they're particularly hard upon police. Firemen are the same way. EMS workers are the same way. Part of that is because they're trying to get you to have a tough skin to deal with what you see, right? So to give you an example, 2 guys that I know had a suspect steal their car right when Dude, where my car come out.
Oh, gotcha.
So we took a picture of the poster, and then we put their pictures on it and taped it all over the station for weeks. There was pictures of them, their names. Dude, where's your car? Dude, where's your car?
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's relentless. Like, one time's fine. You do that for 2 weeks, man. That's, and like we still bring it up when we see them. Like, that's relentless stuff, right? So Charlie and I thought, you got to have a safe place for people to come sit down and have a conversation about things that are real in police work, that are things we don't talk about, that they can feel safe, that they can have a conversation with you and share it. And Charlie and I will both tell you, and I think any expert in mental health will tell you, that when you talk about an issue, it helps you heal from that issue, and it helps you understand that issue. You express emotion from that issue, and then you move forward from that issue, right? So if we can have a conversation with you about an issue that you're having, and you're able to express it, and you're able to release some of the emotion with it in a safe area where you know you're not going to be judged, it makes you feel so much better. And so I've taught my class probably 20, 25 times, and I feel better every time I talk about it. I was angry, I was sad, I've been angry, I've been sad when I've done this class, and now those emotions have pushed themselves out, and now you are getting what you get right now, the real me, how I am, and this is the way I see it with no emotion, and it means so much more without emotion. And I can deal, and I've dealt with it so I can talk about it easier. And that is why we put together Project Hurt. And so once a quarter, we have a meeting. We go to a local restaurant. We'll sit down and have dinner. And we may or may not have beers, it just depends. And then we have conversations. And Jack, your trauma might be that you had a car accident where you watched a young kid die, and we talk about it. There's in my class, there's a lady that comes and talks about her son killing himself, and I can't sit in the room when she talks. You guys probably don't know why, but I watched a 14-year-old man pull a fucking trigger in front of me. He said he was going to kill himself if we didn't get there, and I was down the street, and I was fucking rolling. And I get in that fucking house, and I open the bedroom door, and that motherfucker pulled the trigger in front of me, blew his fucking head off right in front of me. And I couldn't save him. And she talks about how her son took his life. I can't sit in the fucking room with her. And here I am telling you about it, and you hear my voice change, and you hear how humbled I am by it, and how fucking sad I am that I couldn't save that kid. I couldn't fucking save it. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. I know it's not my fault, but you feel the emotion and you hear it in my voice, and you know it's fucking real because it's real to me. And no matter how many times in my life I talk about that story, I cannot forgive myself for not getting there sooner. What if? And the best analogy I can give you, if you take anything from me, what if? If you live your life on a what if, what kind of life can you have? And policemen every day live their life on a what if. What if I turned left instead of right? What if I would have got there 5 minutes faster? What if I would have been there 5 minutes slower? What if I wouldn't have hit this guy? What if I would have wrote this ticket? What if I would have wrote this report? What if I could have done this? And that's the thing I've learned to walk away from, is what if. And it took me a long time to realize that. So if you're out there and you're asking yourself, what if? Stop asking yourself, what if? And start saying, what can I do differently to change, to make things better? What can I do for me to make me a better person? And that's what we need.
Yeah, that's needed to hear that. That's the right way to think about things. Not that, I'm just kind of a normal Joe Schmo, but, you need to, you're right. It's easy to, for a guy who hasn't been through any of this, but it's easy to, on a daily basis, what if I would have, what if I would have wiped a little more than I did, and I wouldn't be, drawers would be stinking.
Right. So the other thing is if you think about it, you just have to think about that part of your life. It totally changes your aspect.
Yeah. But in all seriousness, so that's, you're 100% right. Altering your mindset, though, I'm sure it just changes things.
Think about saying you're sorry to somebody. How many times did you dismiss it? Like, if I bumped into you, I'm sorry. And you're like, all right, whatever. But if I stopped you and pulled your arm back and said, no, man, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Totally different meaning.
Different, yeah.
Totally different meanings.
So, Tom, moving forward, what should people's attention be on? Maybe particular to your situation, maybe not. What is important to you?
Forward to me, we talked about it earlier. Like, I want to teach. I believe that's why God left me here. It's been hard. It's hard to get my foot in the door, but I think my story is unique enough that if I talk to enough policemen or first responders or enough people that are willing to listen, that a light is shed or a door is opened farther for a better understanding of what you see. For policemen, my hope is that I get them help before it's too late. Most policemen deal with their stuff by humor, working out, drinking, or reckless behavior. Reckless behavior. And if I can stop those things from happening, and I can get these guys to realize the destructive behavior they're having, then maybe I create a generation of policemen like me that want to fix everybody's problem and want to help everybody and can do it the right way without controversy and brings back a little less negativity for the badge and a little bit more positivity, where I become Andy from the Andy Griffin Show. You know, the good sheriff, where he cared about everybody and he did the right thing, and not so much Michael Chiklis from The Shield, where that reckless behavior and that craziness that you would watch on TV, and it was like, oh my God, you know, those are the things that need to change in life. You know, it's so funny because, you know, you watch these TV shows and they create all these things, and I will give you the favor. When I hated CSI when it first came out, because people would go, oh, and CSI, they can scan that with a laser and tell you exactly who it is. And I go, do you see me driving a Hummer? And they go, what? I go, my name's not Horatio. I don't drive a Hummer, and there's not 25 cameras behind me. I go, there's no way on God's green earth I can do that.
Yeah.
But people see stuff on TV and think it's real. I got a show for you guys to watch, the End of Watch.
Okay.
Do you even watch that? Jake Gyllenhaal's in it.
Nice. He's the man.
And I cry every time I watch that movie. And every policeman will tell you. And if they don't, they lie about it. They'll cry when they watch that movie because I've been there. It's not as dramatic as they make it in the movie, but I've been there. I've watched people die in front of me, and it is hard. It's hard.
In the watch?
Is there a place we can point people to Project Hurt?
Sure, we're on Facebook, really.
At Project Hurt?
Yeah, I think it's just called ProjectHurt.com on Facebook. I think there's a website. We're a non-for-profit. We don't really raise a lot of money because Charlie and I are just trying to keep ourselves from being unbusy. And, you know, we really like for it to take off, but I just don't think we found the legs that need to be there. But, you know, Charlie, he's doing his thing. He goes around the country. His wife is the president of the Police Lives Association for the entire country. And so he goes to different conferences and he talks about his incident. And this year for me is looking up. I'm excited. I get to go teach out at the state of Missouri has a crisis intervention team, and they have a big seminar they put on here in March. And I'm going to, hopefully I get to teach a class out there and hopefully get to touch more people. So my story right now has been pretty much the St. Louis region, and I'd like to go to different places. So in St. Louis, policemen are required to take a crisis intervention team. It's how to deal with mentally ill people or struggles that people are having and how to look at it differently. They bring me in because they have an officer lived panel, which officers come in and talk about their traumatic incident, their shootings or their fights, and how they survived and what's the best way to, you know, like when you hear a story like mine as a cop, like you completely relate to it. And we didn't get into it. I'm hoping on the next cast we can, which was the struggles that I had later on after everything went away. Like after all the policemen disappeared and I was on my own and, you know, trying to figure out what my next step in life was. And I went down a pretty dark hole. And so they allow me to talk about that because policemen will see behavior that I had in themselves, and then that's when they want to come out and get help. And that, to me, if I help one person, then I've done my job. Right now I know I've helped over 100. And it's important to me.
Yeah. And more.
Mm-hmm. And you guys probably don't know this, but, you know, police suicide is insane. It's just like military suicides. And it comes down to is that most policemen, most first responders, most military guys, especially guys come back after combat, are on an island. And the island is on the right side, it's your loved ones, and you're protecting them from what's on the other side of the island, which is all the bullshit you got to see. And sometimes the wave from that side is overtaking the island, and all you're doing is trying to hold it back, and you can't. And you figure if the island disappears, the water calms down, and then it doesn't, and all it does is leave more questions than anything else.
Well, Tom, thank you for coming in.
Thanks, Jack.
It has been fun.
Really glad you came in here to.
Yeah, sorry. We could talk another couple hours, but
Yeah, well,
you guys got life to do.
we'll have to do another one.
Let's do another, and sure, if you're up to it, I'd love to. Great.
Sure, we'll talk.
Claire at 1923. 229. 213. Hampton and Pernod. 10 stop cars, officer need to be Hampton and Pernod. Hampton and Pernod. District 2, any cars that can respond?
27 and 28 are responder.
27, 28 respond. 12 responding.
11 en route.
11 en route. Hampton and Pernod. 13, you okay?
29 en route.
29's en route. 10, 1927.
Try to get him again.
213. All cars responding. There's no response coming from 213. No radio contacts.
1250, roll EMS, expedite, officer down.
Clear.
2250, officer down, answer for us, start EMS now.
That's clear. It's on the way.
227, we're going to need cars to shut down the route to Barnes Hospital when EMS gets here, citywide.
10 stop cars. We've got an officer down. We're going to need cars to shut down the route for the hospital.
Guys, come in, keep a hold northbound. Which hospital are they going to? We're going to Barnes, leave it now.
Attention all cars. They are leaving the scene now from Hampton and Pernod and responding to Barnes Hospital.
Clear, they're going north.
10 stop cars are going northbound on Kings Highway going to Barnes Hospital from Hampton and Pernod. They need the route shut down. Time's 1930.
21. 27 priority.
Go ahead. 27,
One of
go ahead.
is going to be a gray or tan, light-colored Focus who was last seen westbound on Pernod, eastbound on Pernod. It was occupied by a black male, approximately 2000 model.
Clear.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. Yeah, in the face.